Welcome back. Now, as we keep progressing through this CSS Fundamentals section, there are a couple of fundamentals and really important theoretical concepts that you really need to understand in order to eventually master CSS. In this lecture, we are going to talk about one of the most powerful mechanisms in CSS, which is called inheritance. And actually, we already saw inheritance in action before. So, remember back at the beginning of this session, I mentioned that, for example, this element here, so here Laura Jones, which is a strong element, still gets some of the styles of the paragraph element inside of which it is located, right? So let's just inspect this element. And so of course it is strong and as a default style, so that's the user agent style sheet. Remember, it gets the font's weight as bold. But then here we can also see that it gets some styles inherited from the paragraph. So from its parent element, that is author P, that is font style and font size. And basically what this means is that inheritance is a mechanism by which some styles or some properties get their values inherited from the parent's element to the child elements. And so let's now use this in a big way by getting some styles onto the body element. And so if we set certain properties in the body, then their values will get inherited by all of the child elements. Now, not all properties do actually get inheritance. It is mostly the ones that are related to the text. So let's start with a simple example. So we will take the color property. Now I am giving the body here and setting the color to red. So as we reloaded, nothing really changed here. And the reason for that is that while the red color still get inherited, this color property right here in this rule overrides the inherited style. So the inherited styles are easily overwritten whenever there is a rule that applies into the same property. So in a sense, we can say that inherited values have a very low priority. But anyway, if you now remove the color from here and let's just comment it out. Actually, I'm commenting this. And if I refresh this page, then all the text which does not have any color declared will become red. As you can see here, all these things became red except these headings we declared in color here. What we can do is to set the text color that we actually inserted here in the body and take this color and giving it here. So when I refresh this page, as you can see, the text all changes to gray. So we have declared the value in the body, and this value hashtag 444 get inherited as the color for all the elements which do not have their own color declaration. And now let's actually do the same with the font family. So if we take this and paste it here, as you can have you seen the change here. So once again the elements get the sans serif value here inherited from the font family. As you can see here, it is inherited from the body. And so actually we no longer need these selectors here. So I'm just commenting all this. And just to be sure, I really want to clarify something here one more time. So this is really elements inheriting values from certain properties from one another. This is not conflicting selectors. In other words, the body selector here is not selecting all of these elements, okay? It does not directly apply to all the elements. Instead, what we do is declare value for these properties here, such as color, font family, and then simply get passed down to all the child elements that are contained within the body. And so that's why we use the technique of putting these properties that are related to the text in the body. Because these are the ones that we want all of the elements on the page to have. Now, as I said before, many styles do actually not get inherited because that would be very impractical for most of the properties. For example, let's say border top, border top giving 10 pixels solid blue color. So as I save this, as you can see, we get a blue border at the top of the body. Notice that the child elements don't get all the same borders. Imagine if every child element automatically inherited the border. We would have borders everywhere. So the property like borders generally don't get inherited. What property usually get inherited? The properties that are most commonly inherited are related to text. For example, text, color, font family, font size, line height. These properties make sense to inherit it because we often want the text inside a section to have consistent styling. On the other hand, properties such as borders, backgrounds, margins, paddings generally don't get inherited automatically. So you don't need to memorize every inherited property right now. Just remember the general idea. Text related properties are commonly inherited. So let's make this very clearer with a simple example. Imagine our web page contain this navigation here. As you can see here, the navigation, these ones, and we want everything inside this navigation to have a font size of something called 18 pixel. We could directly target the links. For example, if I go down here, I could write like navigation that a anchors. As you can see, the font size is now 18 pixels, and that would work. But we can sometimes use inheritance instead. We can simply use directly navigation, and as you can see, now it is also 18 pixels. Now the child elements inside this navigation can inherit that font size. So we don't necessarily need to target every individual child element. So for suppose if I take this anchor and I save this, and for suppose if this navigation have a paragraph, mm, not paragraph, something like strong, I'm giving this like navigation, and I save this, and if I refresh this page, as you can see, if I inspect this won't get this 18 font size because we are targeting a specific element. So if we want that size to all of this, we would simply can give navigation. So all of the paragraphs or anything can be inherited the same font size. If I refresh this, now you can see it is inherited from navigation and the font size will be 18 pixels. So the navigation and its child elements can share the same font size. This is the technique that we'll use quite often when we are writing CSS. Now let's finish by looking at another important selector that we memorized earlier, that is called universal selector. It will be look like this. Okay. The universal selector simply selects every single element on this page. Like, for example, if I give this here to here, see, everything gets their border. Every element that gets border, that includes body, headings, paragraphs, strong elements, emphasize elements. So this time we are not using inheritance. We directly selecting every element. And this is very important difference. With the body selector, we are selecting only the body. The child elements can then inherit the color. But with the universal selector, we are directly selecting entire element. So there is no inheritance involved. So these two selectors work in complete different ways. So I'm just keeping back everything normal. So I'm giving the color Okay, and I'm commenting this for now. We will use it later. And that's the basic idea behind inheritance in CSS. Once you understand this concept, you'll start noticing how much CSS relies on the inheritance to keep our code clean and efficient. In the next lecture, we'll continue with another important CSS fundamentals and build on everything we learned so far.